As Jay-Z launches a legal war against the attorney who filed a bombshell rape lawsuit against him, that Texas attorney, Tony Buzbee, has just fired back. He is defending his client's claims about being assaulted by both Jay-Z and Sean Combs 24 years ago and says he shouldn't be sanctioned for what he is doing. Oh, and by the way, Jay-Z just formally sued Buzbee for defamation. Yes, this is a mess, but we're going to break it down for you right now. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. The legal and PR battle between Jay-Z and the attorney representing a woman who claims that the rapper raped her when she was just 13 years old, this has intensified once again. Now, if you've been following this saga, particularly here on Sidebar, you know that every week there's like another back and forth between both sides here. And as it currently stands, we have this anonymous accuser who says that Jay-Z, Sean Carter, and Sean Diddy Combs raped her at a VMA's after party back in 2000, again, when she was 13 years old. It was originally filed in October against just Sean Combs, and I should also say, it only identified this alleged accomplice as Celebrity A. But then Jane Doe filed an amended complaint a few weeks back that says that Celebrity A is actually Jay-Z, real name Sean Carter, and he is now a defendant in this action. I'm talking one of the richest people in the entertainment industry, okay, one of the most well-known. Also, I should say that the amended complaint, it still lists a second alleged participant, not a defendant, but a second alleged participant, a female celebrity who's accused of watching this, being a witness to what happened, and she's only identified as Celebrity B, that she was in the room when this alleged assault took place. We still do not know who that person is. But since this was filed, Jay-Z has come out swinging, calling Tony Buzbee, this Texas attorney behind the lawsuit, a, quote, deplorable human being with no honor or dignity. Jay-Z accused Buzbee of extorting him in the lead up to this lawsuit, essentially accusing Buzbee of approaching Jay-Z, pressuring him to pay over a hefty sum of money, or be, as Jay-Z claims, falsely accused in a public lawsuit. Hey, by the way, we want to keep following this Jay-Z story for you as it develops. And with that in mind, I have to thank our sponsor, Upside, because it's with their support that helps make episodes like this possible. Now, Upside is great if you don't know what it is. It's a free app that helps you get cash back when you buy daily essentials like gas, groceries, food. This is real cash back. It's money that appears in your Upside app that you transfer right into your bank account. Look here, I used Upside to find a gas station near me. I claimed an offer on Upside. I paid with my credit card at the pump, followed the steps on the app. I got cash back. Super simple. You can use Upside at all different kinds of places, restaurants, convenience stores. So to find out how much you could earn, you click the link in the description to download Upside, or you scan the QR code on screen, and you use our promo code SIDEBAR because you get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. Hope you can check it out. Now, what has happened? Jay-Z has denied all of the allegations in this lawsuit, and Tony Buzbee has denied any allegation that he was trying to extort Jay-Z. He said all that he was trying to do, and what he was doing, is he was engaging in standard pre-litigation practice where you send somebody a letter in an effort to resolve the situation, particularly through mediation. But Buzbee, now we got to talk about him. He just filed, and this is what we're going to get into, he just filed a response that we have to talk about. And I got to give you some backstory on where this response is coming from. So the controversy here stems from this. The fact that Jane Doe, this anonymous accuser, sat down for an interview with NBC. Now remember, she claims at 13 years old, she got dropped off at Radio City Music Hall in New York City back in 2000 where the Video Music Awards were being held. She didn't have a ticket, so she wandered around outside, maybe hoping to see a celebrity or two. But who she saw instead was one of Sean Combs' bodyguards, who allegedly told her to come back later that night. He'd take her to a home where Combs was throwing an after party. And when Jane Doe gets to that party, she believes that the drink that she was given was laced with drugs because she started feeling woozy and disoriented. And she says when she went to find a room to lie down in, that was when she was assaulted by both Combs and Jay-Z. That's what she's alleging. And again, I should also tell you that Sean Combs has also denied these allegations as well. But when Jane Doe spoke with NBC News recently, she acknowledged that there are parts of her stories that, yes, they have some inconsistencies. Jane Doe was quoted as saying, "I have made some mistakes," but she said she stands by her overall allegations and says, look, this happened 24 years ago. Of course, some details have been lost to time. But here are some of the issues. Jane Doe says that after the alleged rapes, She was able to run away from the home, find this gas station where she was allowed to use the phone. She said she had called her dad to come pick her up. Problem there is her father told NBC News he didn't remember that, and that if he had come to pick her up, it would have been a 5-hour drive. On top of that, he apparently told NBC News that he never even heard of this alleged attack on his daughter until the reporters came asking questions. Jane Doe also claimed that she spoke to or saw Benji Madden at this VMA's after party. He, of course, is the lead guitarist for the rock band Good Charlotte. His representatives, though, told NBC News that he was in the Midwest on tour at the time. So with that coming out, Alex Spiro, who's Jay-Z's high-powered attorney, sent a letter to the judge calling the allegations a sham. Quote, she claims the assault took place at an after party at Mr. Combs' home, but photos that night show Mr. Combs and Mr. Carter at Lotus nightclub for the after party. When pressed, the plaintiff admitted she was guessing about key details, including the time it took to reach the venue. She admits she has no single corroborating witness over the last 24 years. I talked about this before in a prior sidebar. It is possible, if you take her allegations as true, that Jay-Z and Sean Combs maybe went to a few places in that after party, so we don't know when this other after party where she claims she was assaulted took place. But again, this is problematic for her, right? The fact that her father can't back it up, the fact that the Benji Madden incident, there was also an incident that she recalled a Jumbotron, but there's been evidence to suggest there wasn't a Jumbotron. So there's holes in this story. Now, NBC News, they did report that they tried to locate this friend who allegedly drove Jane Doe to the VMAs that night, but it appears that person has died. And they indicated that they tried to reach out to this person's relatives, but they didn't really have any luck. Now, Jay-Z reportedly told NBC, this incident didn't happen. And he says, look, but Tony Buzbee filed it in court anyway. He doubled down in the press, adding, true justice is coming. We fight from victory, not for victory. This was over before it began. This 1-800 lawyer doesn't realize it yet, but soon. Again, referencing Tony Buzbee. So Buzbee released a statement defending himself, saying, look, Jane Doe's case, it was referred to me by another firm. Her story had allegedly already been vetted. His statement read, our client remains fiercely adamant that what she has stated is true to the best of her memory. We will continue to vet her claims and collect corroborating data to the extent it exists. Because we have interrogated her intensely, she has even agreed to submit to a polygraph. I've never had a client suggest that before. And for her part, this unnamed Jane Doe said to NBC, you should always fight for what happened to you. You should always advocate for yourself and be a voice for yourself. You should never let what somebody else did ruin or run your life. I just hope I can give others the strength to come forward like I came forward. And before we again go into his latest response, I just have to give you one more piece of background information, because after all this happened, attorney Alex Spiro filed this emergency motion with the court. And he asked that either the case be thrown out completely or Jay-Z be dismissed from the suit. And he also said he wants to ensure that evidence be preserved in this case because he alleged that Buzbee may actually destroy evidence. So in a memorandum in support of this motion, it reads, this is again from Alex Spiro, Jay-Z's lawyer, the fundamental inconsistencies in plaintiff's case revealed in the NBC interview, coupled with Buzbee's chronic inability to follow the rules in this case and others, creates a substantial risk that Buzbee will destroy evidence damaging to plaintiff's case, including evidence of his own misconduct. And the memo gives us a scathing summary of Buzbee's actions and how Spiro's firm believes that Buzbee has violated what's called Rule 11, that you act so badly in this case, you're a lawyer who acts so badly, you should be sanctioned, you should be punished by the court. I'll explain that in a minute, but what he writes is, rather than conducting his own due diligence to vet his client's claims, again referring to Jane Doe, Buzbee merely relied on the purported vetting of another firm, telling NBC Jane Doe's case was referred to our firm by another who vetted it prior to sending it to us. But no one from the other firm signed the pleadings in this case. Buzbee did. He goes on to say, under these circumstances, it must be assumed that Buzbee will go to extraordinary lengths to conceal his ethical violations. There is accordingly a significant risk that Buzbee will seek to destroy documents or other evidence that would demonstrate that he knew or should have known that the allegations in the complaint were false. Okay, so there you have it. That's the backstory. Now, as I mentioned, Buzbee has responded. So, in a letter to United States District Court Judge Alyssa Torres of the Southern District of New York, that is where this case was filed, Buzbee writes, as with defendant Carter's prior letters filed in this case, it is histrionic in tone but substantively groundless. Defendant Carter threatens plaintiff with a Rule 11 motion based on questions raised by one single television interview concerning events occurring 24 years ago when plaintiff was 13 years old. And he goes on to write, Defendant Carter's threat of a Rule 11 motion is frivolous because it characterizes run-of-the-mill disputes of fact as proof that plaintiff's complaint is baseless. None of the factual issues Carter identifies are sufficient even to grant summary judgment in Carter's favor, much less support Rule 11 sanctions. The fact that the defendant or a potential witness doesn't agree with or recollect the facts alleged in the complaint does not and cannot give rise to a motion for sanctions for filing a baseless complaint. Defendant Carter's threat of an immediate sanctions motion on the first whisper of factual uncertainty is just one more instance of bullying intended to have a chilling effect on plaintiff's counsel, and any potential plaintiffs watching these proceedings. That refers to, of course, any other potential Jay-Z or Sean Combs accusers. So let me break this down for you real quick. First, for a court to grant sanctions under Rule 11, usually monetary punishment, in a case like that, it is not common, okay? It is rare for a court to do that. You have to be talking about egregious bad behavior. Rule 11 is about a lawyer making false representations to the court, filing a lawsuit for an improper purpose, like merely just to harass someone, that a lawyer is asserting claims or defenses that are not backed up by the facts, the law, or evidence currently known or likely to be known. That is what we're talking about. And here, Buzbee is like, what are we saying? We're saying that Jane Doe's claims are just absolutely fake because Jay-Z said this didn't happen, or her father says he doesn't remember this, or a celebrity wasn't there. Look, she is recounting something from 24 years ago when she was a young girl. And also, I think he would argue, in any case, there's going to be conflicting witnesses about what did or didn't happen. These are why he says run-of-the-mill disputes. That can't be proof that her claims have no evidentiary support. And when he mentions summary judgment and how Jay-Z is not entitled to summary judgment is when a party asks the court to step in, just decide this case in their favor before there's even a trial. You're basically saying there is nothing for a jury to decide here. The argument from Jay-Z would be there's no way a jury can look at this and find in favor of Jane Doe. We call it under the law no genuine issue of material fact. Buzbee says just because there's a dispute here doesn't mean this didn't happen, doesn't mean he can't prove it, doesn't mean this shouldn't go to a jury. And he also explains there could be an issue with recollection here, that it's understandable, because think about what she's alleging. She says she was raped at 13 years old. Of course that affects recollection, but it doesn't mean her claims aren't true. Buzbee writes, a Rule 11 motion is frivolous on the additional ground that expecting a victim of sexual assault over 2 decades ago, when that victim was a minor and, as her interview revealed, also autistic, to have perfect recall of all facts is outrageous. Defendant Carter twists plaintiff's words when he accuses her, for instance, of guessing at the timing of events alleged in the complaint, such as the length of car rides. But New York courts have expressly acknowledged that plaintiffs in this type of case cannot be expected to have exacting recall and command of all relevant facts. And then he cites a New York case from 2021 that held, we recognize that in matters of sexual abuse involving minors, as recounted by survivors years after the fact, dates and times are sometimes approximate and incapable of calendrical exactitude, and approving allegations spanning a 4-year window of time in which the abuse could have occurred. Buzbee also cites a second issue with this Rule 11 motion, the timing. He writes, Defendant Carter also asked this court to alter the federal rules of civil procedure in his favor by abrogating the mandatory 21-day Rule 11 safe harbor period without any legal support or factual justification whatsoever. So a quick primer here. Under the federal rules, a motion for sanctions, quote, must not be filed or be presented to the court if the challenged paper, claim, defense, contention, or denial is withdrawn or appropriately corrected within 21 days after service or within another time the court sets. So the reason we have that is because you want to give a party, a plaintiff or a defendant, and their lawyers some time to review the objections from the other side and figure out if they need to amend or withdraw something. They should be allowed some time to fix this. And Buzbee says Jay-Z is asking the court to shorten that time period from 21 days to 1 day. And he argues Jay-Z has not provided any support for why he should be entitled to this. And Buzbee also argues that this motion from Jay-Z and other legal steps Jay-Z and his attorneys have taken, such as requiring that the issue of whether Jane Doe should have to reveal her identity, that it needs to be resolved now at this part, at the start of this case, All of this, Buzbee says, is crossing the line into bad faith. And from there, Buzbee goes more on the attack. He writes, moreover, outside of the courtroom, Mr. Carter has employed tactics of intimidation and harassment even more extreme, tortious, and quite possibly illegal. My firm recently filed a lawsuit in Harris County, Texas, that details how Mr. Carter's company, Rock Nation, and his counsel have bribed my clients to file lawsuits against my firm, threatened former clients, impersonated state officials, and engaged in other behavior far beyond the pale of acceptable conduct. Their tactics won't work, and they will be addressed in more detail in connection with the plaintiff's briefing on plaintiff's anonymity. So they haven't decided that issue about whether or not Jane Doe will have to remain anonymous. That's going to be continued to be argued. But what he's alleging here, and what this is in relation to, is something that we talked about on a previous sidebar. How Buzbee's firm did file a lawsuit claiming that Rock Nation paid people to impersonate officials, use fake badges, offer money to people who agreed, essentially the argument is, to file lawsuits against Buzbee's law firm. For example, the lawsuit states, one such target of defendant's solicitation was plaintiff Gerardo Garcia. He was injured in a Jones Act lawsuit and hired the Buzbee law firm to represent him. His case was settled in 2020. He was happy with the resolution of his case and had no complaints with the Buzbee law firm. Nearly 5 years later, after his case had been resolved, not seeking to hire a lawyer or file a lawsuit, Mr. Garcia was contacted out of the blue by two investigators. This contact was an illegal solicitation and was made on behalf of and as part of a conspiracy involving defendants. According to Garcia, two investigators came to his home and flashed some sort of badge at him, stating that they were from the state. They asked him about his 2020 settlement, wanting to know if he was happy with the result and asking to see the paperwork. They allegedly said they could get him in touch with a private lawyer who could sue the Buzbee firm and get him a lot of money. So again, that's what he's referencing in his letter. And going back to this letter from Tony Buzbee, he writes to the court, like Mr. Combs, Mr. Carter is rich, famous, and powerful. Mr. Carter will exert all the pressure he can to intimidate and harass plaintiff, me, or anyone else. The chilling effect of these efforts is substantial, as is the potential chilling effect of a Rule 11 motion being brought in these circumstances. And finally, he also addresses in this letter one more thing. He addresses Jay-Z's legal team's claim that Tony Buzbee is not licensed to practice law in this New York court, and that he never sought admission, and that he neither sought admission to practice on a temporary basis for the case. We call that pro hoc vice. And they say, despite that, Tony Buzbee has been signing papers in this case nonetheless. Well, Buzbee has a response to that. He writes in this letter that Jay-Z's December 13th letter includes a substantial amount of defamatory suggestions about me, including that I am somehow attempting to circumvent the authority of this court to enforce Rule 11 against me. That is nonsense. I am a member of the State Bar of New York and am admitted to the Eastern District of New York. I intend to apply for reciprocal admission to the Southern District. The fact that I have signed pleadings and letters filed in this court does not reflect any attempt by me to evade responsibility for anything. To the contrary, I have signed those pleadings and papers because I am lead counsel in this and other similar cases pending in this district. Now, here, look, in the end, this is my analysis. I think that a Rule 11 sanctions is probably premature, right? I think there's a strong possibility that the judge will not impose sanctions at this stage of the litigation unless there's more definitive proof that Buzbee knew Jane Doe's claims were all false and that they are false and that he just filed it anyway. I think there needs to be a bit more explored here. I think there's an argument to be made that, look, I mean, of course, there's a difference between what a plaintiff and a defendant say happened, and of course, there's going to be competing witnesses, but again, let's see where that goes. Now, before we go, one more thing I have to mention. Before Sean Carter, Jay-Z, was named as a defendant by name in this Jane Doe lawsuit, he apparently filed an anonymous lawsuit against Tony Buzbee, again, claiming he extorted him. But now it is being reported by outlets such as Rolling Stone and People that he has added a defamation claim in his legal action against this Texas lawyer. Defamation is a false statement published to a third party, and since you're dealing with a public figure, you have to prove actual malice, that you knew this statement was false when you made it, or you acted with reckless disregard for the truth when you made it. You didn't even do the proper due diligence. And here it's about the fact that Buzbee, Jay-Z claims, held a press conference months ago announcing that he would be filing a multitude of lawsuits against Sean Combs and that he would be naming names. And then what does he end up doing? He names Jay-Z as really the first high-profile alleged accomplice to Sean Combs, who, as we know, is currently facing federal sex crimes charges. So Jay-Z's complaint, filed in LA, reportedly states, beginning in October 2024, Buzbee spoke on any news platform that would have him, threatening that his firm had a long list of names of people in the entertainment industry who he accused of terrible conduct and who should be prosecuted and put underneath the jail. And the complaint further states, and Buzbee then gleefully announced to the world that one name on his long list was Mr. Carter, claiming that he engaged in criminal sexual assault. Now, Buzbee denied the defamation claims, replying via press statement, "The new claim is patently frivolous and will be dismissed. I've never said a word about him. This is just another attempt to bully and intimidate me. It just won't work." Now, so in my opinion, I think that this defamation claim might be tricky to win because usually parties are protected from being sued for defamation when they file lawsuits and they file legal claims against each other. Every lawsuit is an accusation that the other side will deny. You can't just say, oh, well, everybody can sue for defamation, otherwise you really wouldn't have lawsuits. People can't just turn around and automatically be able to sue for defamation because, again, that would chill lawsuits from coming forward. But if there were statements made in public, that's a different story. Now, Buzbee may say, I never mentioned Jay-Z by name in any of my prior comments before filing this Jane Doe lawsuit. The counter-argument to that would be, well, now we know who you were talking about. It's like in the Johnny Depp case, right? He wasn't named specifically in that Washington Post op-ed piece about domestic violence that was penned by his ex Amber Heard, but the jury said in that trial, those statements were clearly about him and they were defamatory. So let's see how all this shakes out. I am sure there will be a lot more ahead. That's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.